Kind of like it. And I waited so long because the other ones you can't dive with, can't get through that. This one's there.
Can you all hear me?
Cleaner.
You're unmuted now, Megan.
Go
All
for
right,
it.
Mayor, we're ready to roll.
Great. Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna call to order the Cottonwood Heights, the CDRA meeting for Cottonwood Heights. Today is Tuesday, November 19th, and this is the work session for that meeting. As Mayor of Cottonwood Heights, I serve as the chair for the Community Development and Renewal Agency with members of the City Council serving as members of the board. Item number 2 on our agenda today is a Canyon Center update. So I'm going to actually turn the time over to our Community and Economic Development Director, Mike Johnson, who's been working with the applicant on this item. So Mike, it's up to you.
Thank you. Okay, there is some background here, so I'll try to get through this quickly and efficiently, but it's kind of, there's a lot of layers to this request, and I think it helps to have the full background to understand it. But this, at a high level, you've heard from the developer in the past, in February, and I believe subsequently maybe in the summer sometime. The developer of Canyon Center and the Canyon Center CDA, which is Community Development Area, is seeking a modification of the existing project area plan, budget, and development agreement between the developer and the agency. The heart of that agreement is a change in use from what was originally entitled as an office building to a residential condominium building. The amendment also is needed to further amend the construction deadline of the office/condominium building, as well as the rental residential apartment building that's already been approved on the site. The current development agreement shows a construction deadline of December 2024. That we're contemplating a proposal of extending that by a handful of years to December 2028. Of note, the Canyon Center developer is under contract with a condominium developer as well. I believe both are here. So Mayor, I do just want to acknowledge that there are representatives from the project here if you have questions for them.
Great.
Some background here. As you all are aware, this is part of the Canyon Center Master Development Plan. It's 11-ish acres at the mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon, originally approved in 2014, which was also from a land use standpoint in 2014. That's the first phase of the project. That's when the office building was originally entitled and approved, was with phase one in early 2014. The uses over the entire Canyon Center area include the large public-private parking structure, numerous commercial, retail, restaurant spaces, 149 room hotel, 17 single-family homes, a rental apartment building, again, not yet constructed, but fully approved and entitled, that has 140 units, and then originally a 65,000 square foot office building, now being proposed to be amended to a residential condominium building, so for sale condominiums, as well as a public space, a park plaza, central in that site. Everything on this site is constructed except for the rental apartment building, which is shown right there adjacent to Racket Club Drive, and obviously the office pad, which sits on top of the parking structure on the south portion of that site. This has gone to Planning Commission, so this is all information that the Planning Commission considered and has voted on at this point, but this may help. This was the previous approval for the office building. This is just the architecture, design, massing, kind of building elevation. This is the corresponding version of that's been approved now for the condominium building. So you can see building massing, building intensity, heights, things like that are not any substantially different than what was previously approved and entitled. From an impact analysis, again, this has been deliberated on by the Planning Commission. Heights are the same as what was previously approved. The parking burden for a condominium use versus an office use is much less intense. That parking, the office building had 260 stalls allocated for it. The condominium by code needs only 46. I believe they're, requesting something like 70 or 80. Still far less than the 260 stalls that was approved for the office. Traffic generation, from a land use impact standpoint, a condominium building has a substantially, less substantial impact on the surrounding area in terms of parking burden, traffic, things like that. It generates 164 trips on an average weekday as opposed to 746 for an office building. The density proposed for the condominium building is 36 units. That brings the total amount of residential units between all three residential pieces of the Canyon Center project to 193, which is still only half of the allowable density within the ordinance there. One thing of note that the Planning Commission adopted as a condition of approval that's been contemplated for a few phases now is one of the conditions of approval that they imposed on this, the land use side of this deal, was the construction of a physical left turn barrier exiting Canyon Center Parkway onto Wasatch Boulevard. Traffic studies have shown that's the only failing movement there. You're turning left across a lot of lanes of traffic. Visibility is not great. Roadway speeds are sometimes fairly high. So it's been recommended as a condition and adopted by the commission to prohibit a left turn from Canyon Center Parkway onto Wasatch Boulevard by working with Public Works to install some sort of physical barrier there. So that is now a standing condition. As soon as any further development moves forward on this site, that will be installed. These, I don't expect you to be able to read all these, but this is the list of conditions of approval that the Planning Commission imposed. And again, they are only the land use authority. So they were only looking at this site in terms of its land use impact, ordinance compliance. The whole other side of this, which is what we're here tonight for, is the development agreement side of it related to the CDA, interlocal agreements, the legislative side of things. But the land use process has been initiated and approved for the change of use, contingent on all of these other steps taking place. So the three highlighted conditions that I just want to bring your attention to are the top three there. One being the big one, the applicant shall receive approval of all necessary amendments to the CDA. Project area plans, financial projections, interlocal agreements, development agreements, et cetera, prior to a building permit being able to be issued. The applicant shall construct for sale condominium units as proposed. A substantial change in units between approval and construction could require further deliberation by the planning commission. And then the applicant shall submit an updated shared parking agreement, which is in the development agreement, and I'll talk about in a couple minutes. So this is just some background. This has gone through the land use side, which again is just one piece of the puzzle here. Switching back to the agency's role in this, the process to approve a change of use based on our review and analysis, and based on an analysis by Lewis Robertson Birmingham, who's the financial consultant for this project. It's kind of this three-pronged approach. The pyramid diagram there was presented by LRB at a previous council work session. We have interlocal agreements, and those lie between the city or the agency and the various taxing entities that have contributed to the CDA. There's a developer agreement, which is between the city and the developer. And then there's the project area plan and budget, which contemplates the projected tax increment financing, taxable values, and lays out a budget for the life of the CDA. And then also provides a summary of what's in the project area plan. We find and feel that all three of these things need to be amended to be able to move a change of use forward. The agency is required on all of these in different capacities. So what the request is to update the development agreement between the city and the developer to allow that change of use and update the project timeline. And then a sidebar to this is amendment of the land use approvals, which has been done and is just kind of sitting there contingent on other things happening. I also won't go through this. This has been shared in the past, but this is just a document timeline of this project. You can see the first project area plan was adopted in 2011. It's undergone subsequent amendments and updates and changes. Which brings us to now. A couple of these have extended the construction timeline out to where they are now. Again, most of the site is constructed and finished, but we've got those two buildings that are yet to be completed. Maybe a very key slide here as part of your deliberation. Key assumptions, and this was completed. This was a financial analysis completed by LRB. Key assumptions of what are the impacts financially of amending the use from the entitled office building to a 36-unit residential condominium building, as well as changing the completion date and subsequently the tax increment financing trigger date, where we can start collecting on this to 2028 and starting to see tax revenue collected in 2029. LRB has completed an amended budget that includes all of these scenarios in it. We've reviewed that very carefully. We think their findings, that they're just projections and estimates, but we think they make the right assumptions and are fairly accurate. Some assumptions that have been made based on preliminary conversations, especially with Salt Lake County, who's a major taxing entity participating in this, as well as Canyon School District. The updated projections assume Canyon School District is not participating in TIF contribution for the condominium use on the site. They already are not participating in the 17 lot single family product. Any TIF we receive specifically generated from those residential units is remitted back to them annually. We also remit just a flat cut of 30% back to Canyon School District on an annual basis as well. Those assumptions are all accounted for. But the new assumption is where they were participating in the office use previously, the budget has now been amended to where they are not participating in the condominium use. Both Canyon School District and Salt Lake County had previously in previous amendments to this plan implemented caps, which is basically they will contribute up to a maximum amount of tax increment financing. And then their contribution would stop. Canyon School Districts was about 4.6 million, or a maximum time of 25 years. Salt Lake County's was 3 million with a cap of 25 years. And then some priority funding, how tax increment financing and revenue gets remitted back to the various taxing entities and various uses on the site is prioritized in the budgets, and that's not proposed to be amended here. But the first priorities, so basically the first money out of this is the Canyon School District residential remittance, their 30% remittance from their contribution. The Salt Lake County loan payment. The Salt Lake County had initially passed through funding that provided upfront money to construct the parking structure. So most of their interest in this is recouping the cost of that initial that what they're calling a loan to the project. It's about, remind me the number on that, Scott.
7.75 million.
Yeah, it's about 7 million or just under 8 million. Additional first priorities, the city public space improvements, that was $770,000. We're projected to hit that in about 2 years, so we're well on our way. Regardless of any amendment to this, the city will see its 770,000 for that park space fairly soon. And then just a general flat rate 5% administration fee. There are then second priorities. So assuming all those first priorities get funded and paid, the second priorities move to a developer loan repayment and then ongoing operation and maintenance revenue for the parking structure. Conclusions reached by swapping out the office building, putting in the residential condominium building, taking out the Canyon School District participation in that condominium building, and then moving the actual increment collection for that condominium building to 2029 results in kind of this bottom section here. It will take 23 years for Salt Lake County to reach its cap and see its initial loan payment paid off, which is
23 years from what year? From this year or from 2029?
I think it's from the trigger date, 2021. Yep.
2021 is the trigger date.
But that is within their 25-year allowance in their agreement. So they are projected to see their investment or their loan paid back in full within their timeline. And then projections are for Canyon School District with all the caveats to reach their cap by year 24. So by 24 years from the trigger date, all first priorities will be are projected to be funded. There is inadequate funds projected to cover the developer loan repayments. I think that was initially anticipated at like $1.5 million. Under the new budget, the developer does not see any of that revenue because these other things take priority there. A portion of the originally projected operation and maintenance costs are seen. I think initially the estimate was, a flat $70,000 a year, totaled like 1.8 million over the life of the project area. The new projection is about 1.5 million, so it's a couple $100,000 short of that. That does fluctuate, based on property tax values changing, and that it's just a prediction. And then those operation and maintenance funds are paid to the condominium HOA that manages that site. Those aren't city. The city's not going out and doing that maintenance. They just subsidize the private maintenance of that parking structure.
On the 85,000 square feet of office space, is that net or gross?
That's gross. Net is like 60 or 65, or was.
Okay.
So to do all this, the master developer has made a request now of the agency to amend their development agreement, which again, we feel necessitates the need to amend the project area plan and budget and go through amendments to interlocal agreements with any relevant taxing entity. And staff is recommending that those things take place before a final amended development agreement be considered by the agency. In an effort to try to see this project through and acknowledging that they have a buyer under contract for that condo space, and wanting to see this project finish and meet these projections. Staff's recommendation, given all this, is that the agency, prior to the end of the year, to their December construction deadline, consider what we're calling a conditional approval or a conditional development agreement amendment that amends the construction deadline to 2028, so they're not in breach of that provision, and approves the change of use from office to residential, subject to proper approval of the amended ILAs going through each taxing entity's process. There's a noticing requirement to amend project area plans and budgets. And then, the county and the school district have their own policies for how they have to review those. Staff has also identified a potential concern with the $770,000 for that park not being adequate to fully construct the improvements on that. One idea we had that we've requested is in the current draft that is kind of going back and forth, is that we allow the developer to construct the improvements in a way that the city approves. The reason being, private development markets can often build the same level of improvements at a much a cheaper cost than the city can. Dover Hill Park being an example, that the model there is we've signed an agreement and a contract with Ivory Homes to build the park improvements that we've agreed upon, and they're doing it for about half the cost of what it would take the city to do it. So that allows us, we think, to stretch that $770,000 and still result in the improvements that we want to see there. The final park design is not set yet. We're going to be going through some public input on that. We have some concepts, but we do think there could be some efficiency there if we put that on the developer to do that. We will contribute then the budget that we're collecting for that, but it allows them to build it at a more efficient cost. And then we have asked that the developer submit an updated shared parking plan that reflects the change from office parking to condominium parking.
May we
Yeah.
pause for a moment
Yeah.
on that?
Yep.
So I think that may be over parked, the office to square footage, 1,000 square feet of office space. And the ratio of 4 stalls per 1,000 is what I meant to say, square feet. For residential, it's generally less.
Yep.
And so I'm asking if we want to, ask that be recalculated based on this being a residential project and not an office project.
That's exactly what we're proposing here. I think one of my tables here showed.
It did,
Okay.
it did.
Yep, 260 stalls for the office as opposed, and these are just,
But that's
requirements.
based on 4 per 1,000.
And on the right, the condominium is 1.2 stalls per unit, which is 46 stalls.
Oh, thank you.
Way
I'm
less.
sorry.
Yep.
I got caught up on that. Okay, great. Thank you.
But there's like 5 pages of this kind of graphic in the development agreement, and it all references office and a lot more parking than is what we anticipate there. So we're comfortable, if the council's or the agency is willing to consider a conditional amendment, this be part of that. Hey, at some point in the future here, as we work through this, reconfigure this, because we do want this parking plan to properly reflect what will be out there. And right now it's a lot of office parking that the reality is the condo doesn't need that much and won't use that much. So we want to see what they're.
And so how might that benefit the community then if there is lesser
Well,
stalls?
you may remember right now, the shared parking is, and you can kind of see here, this is a scan, so it's not meant to be something that we can scrutinize in detail, but the parking available to the public fluctuates based on day of the week, time of the day, and then weekends and holidays, so that the maximum amount of public parking is, basically weekends and holidays where you anticipate that ski and canyon traffic is at its peak. As it is right now, on a weekday, a lot more of the parking is earmarked specifically for office use, which we don't think is going to be the reality, given a condominium building. So we're kind of putting that on the developer to show, hey, with your surplus in parking, how are you proposing to use that in a way that benefits the public? And that will be reflected in this updated plan.
Thank you.
Just quickly touching on the financial projections, the taxable value estimated for a 36 unit condominium building is about $20 million, and that's accounting for already the residential exemption. So $20 million of taxable value at full build out, again, an estimate. In today's market, for an office use of 65,000 usable square feet, it's actually less, it's like 18 million of taxable value. And that's just reflective of where the office market is right now. It's not to say it will always be there, but in terms of taxable value in today's market, the condominium building, even with the residential exemption, does net out even higher than an office would today. So I'll turn it over to you. I know the applicant is here as well to answer any questions, if you'd like to invite them up. If the council's in favor of this, the next steps would be we would send the proposed updated budget to the school district so they can start their process. And then we would be back with a conditional development agreement amendment at one of the next couple meetings before the end of the year. And then get to work right away on formalizing and updating the interlocal agreements with each taxing entity.
So I want to thank Mike, first of all. That was actually a really good explanation of a quite complex issue. So I think that was really, really clear to the council. Mike, are there any other questions from the council? Like I said, I thought Mike did a great job.
As he always does.
Well, of course, you know, the concern, one of the major concerns I have here in District 4 is the residents who live in the vicinity have been very disappointed that that's property has remained a dirt lot that they anticipated would become a park several years ago. And so I would like to see any agreement put a real timeline to the completion of the park. However, that can be put together. I would appreciate some kind of guarantee to the residents that they'll see the completion of the park in sooner than later.
And this agreement, Mike, would put a deadline of the end of 2028. Is that right?
Well, that's for the completion of the condominium building. So there's no hard deadline in the current agreements on park completion. It's partially based on the availability of the city funds to complete that. And I think those are projected to be fully collected by 2027.
I'm just looking at past meetings that we've had. I know that they've mentioned wanting to use a portion of that as staging ground for the construction, which makes sense. You're gonna need some space for that. So I don't know if they need to complete the condo first before they build the park, or if that's a deadline they could do both by that. I guess I'd look for feedback from them.
Yeah.
But I know, right? Is that correct, Mike? Part of it is going to be needed for construction.
They had mentioned that in previous meetings, to
Yeah.
the agency.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a safety issue there too.
Oh, for
If
sure.
that park is done before it. I just don't see how that is possible.
So if the folks, if they're able to hit that mark for both, great. If not, I guess we'll look for their feedback on if that's the deadline to do the condo, and then there's a 6-month leeway or something that needs to be done. But I agree with you. We should have some agreement of what the expectations are for sure.
Well, I think there was a discussion of could the north side of the acreage be completed? Because as I understand it, and of course, Mr. McCandless can give us more details, but I remember the entrance for the construction vehicles was a more southerly roadway or entrance, which those who live in the townhomes on the other side of the street had a concern that their singular entrance in and out of their townhomes would be directly across from where the trucks were to make the turn to get into the construction area. So I'd like to see a lot more detail on that and how we can get through these next years, and the residents of that townhome area also can have their needs met, like their trash cans, all their waste cans come out curbside one day out of the week. And I think this needs to really be thought through in a way that the noise and the dust and the danger on the roadway and a lot of these elements are considered. And I don't know, is there any update on the 100 and I think it's 132 unit? I don't think it's 140 unit apartment complex. Any timeline to what that owner? I realize that's no longer under your purvey, Mr. McCandless, but I know you like to be called Chris, but I'm trying to be formal here. maybe you could speak to that. Should we, is there any reason why we don't invite these gentlemen up to the table?
No reason, no.
No. There's a seat here, any of you?
That's so important now. I call Mark maybe at least once a month, like asking for an update. He tells me recently, as late as last week or the week before, that he is getting very, very close to starting his apartment complex. Because he has his HUD financing in place, has construction costs down by quite a bit. I don't know if that's actually gonna happen, but that's what he tells me. It's the best apartment property in the valley, so I expect it'll happen sooner or later. With the amendment to this, he'll have till 2028 to get that completed. But you're right, Councilwoman Burrell. I am not in that loop. I'm just feeding information that's been given to me.
I mean, that is within our purview. I mean, maybe not at this meeting, but you know, there are concerns about the egress, ingress, and the way that the roadways are in that western side of the canyon center. But again, that's
We'd be glad to coordinate that with staff based on the recommendation and be the determination whether you can develop half of the park now or wait until the condominiums are done. Because if we're gonna put the access road for the construction entrance further to the north to avoid the residents in the single-family detached homes, it's not gonna be possible to improve the park till after that's completed, so that puts it in that 2028 route. To that end, we are willing to help coordinate those park improvements, no question. We agree with staff. We think we can do it for less money and stretch for dollars. But it's always been the city was gonna develop the park. And we'll step into that role. We need to have progress payments made to us. So as you guys get the money to build the park, then we start taking on that role. But as the work gets done, we'd like to have progress payments to whatever extent is possible paid, so that we don't have to fund it, basically.
So I would just add maybe to the discussion, so I've analyzed this new agreement and the amendment to it, and I think a lot of, I think Shane's expertise came in and helped play a role, and I think it's at a place that we all want something to happen. The last thing we want is for it to remain dirt and to sit and to delay the park and all of the things that we think will add to the community. So to me, this agreement looks fair. It puts a lot of work still on the developer side to get their conditional aspects done. But so I'm in favor of moving forward with this agreement. There isn't anything else in it that gives me pause. So I just thought I'd add that.
If we could, Mayor, we've got a couple of things we'd like to request be modified.
Sure.
In the amendment, when we sell the podium to the residential condominium owner, we anticipate conveying the third level of parking that has 55 stalls plus the potential to create a few more. And then he has the surface parking rights that are dedicated on the plat for his specific use. And I believe that gives him almost all of the number that he needs in order to make his project work. And so that's really more of a disclosure, because the P3 parking structure is actually owned by us. And so we convey that. He'd still be subject to all of the documents associated with this transaction, which, as Shane knows, is quite voluminous. I've been reading them a lot lately, and it's challenging, but it's a lot of material. And so that particular parking on the third level is absolutely 100% exclusive with no public use at all in the shared parking agreement. So we don't impact that shared parking agreement. We really don't want to change the shared parking plan until, and we could put together a draft, we could work on the details until after he has actually purchased the property. If something happens to him, he gets run over by a train, that would be really sad, and we would definitely cry at the funeral, but I don't want to have to come back here and say, okay, we're going back to an office building and making that change. The son's calling me. And so we'd rather wait to do the shared parking agreement until after, and part of the justification of that, and to answer Councilwoman, your question on what happens to it, we anticipate that all of our parking that was office related in scope will be used for public purposes. Still want to charge them, we will, because there's a lot of expenses associated with that. So to that extent, on the addendum, we'd like to see the development agreement delete those elements associated with modifying that before the end of the year. Couple of things that we noted is, and I love what Mike said on that everybody gets paid back, which is exciting, but it's everybody but us. We lose all the money that we put into that and anticipating that we get it back. We won't, and we thought it was the most recent TIF that we expected to get back over the term of the thing was about 2.3 million. And so we know that's going away, and we want to see this project finished just as bad as you guys, if not more so. Couple of things that I thought was interesting. If I can I share some information? Okay, nobody's saying no, so I'm just gonna keep going. The
Yes.
original estimated value of the CDA was about 59 million at the term's conclusion, 59,012. In 2018, that changed to 51,289,000 simply because the county said, we're not gonna assess a property tax on the parking structure. So we reduced, and everybody knew it, we reduced the end of term amount from 59 million to $51,289,000. The TIF generated associated with that 2018 study was $16.56 million. Now, the new study that just came out shows the 2024 estimated value has jumped just a little bit. At the end of the conclusion of our build out, it's $90,183,000, significantly more than what was anticipated. In fact, right now today, the assessed value of the project is $52.572 million, which is more than what was anticipated in 2018. So, because I've heard a lot of comments about the public's not getting what they wanted, they're actually getting a lot more than what they bargained for. To that extent, everybody gets paid, as I mentioned. The second thing we'd like to, or the third thing, other than the red line edits for the shared park, we're really excited to make changes to that. We just think it's extraordinarily important to get through the construction deadline from 24 to 28 and the use for residential property instead of an office. Because if we don't, then I'm in default. If I'm in default, then potentially we lose our sale. If we lose our sale, our estimate is it'll be 7 years before we build an office building. There is no market today. Lots of empty buildings out there. I was talking to the superintendent from Canyon School District, and they bought the eBay building for half what it would cost to build it. You can't rent structures, build them and rent them and expect to make a profit. So 7 years costs in property tax and TIF about $1,500,000 over that 7 year period that the city and the taxing entities would lose. But we really want to see the 12/31 deadline change happen. Number 3 is the plaza lot. There's a request that we take the parking stalls associated with the plaza lot in the latest version of the development agreement And the challenge we have with that is we don't own those rights. Plaza lot parking stalls, the parking stalls that are located within a recorded easement in the plaza lot. I'm calling it plaza, well, I hope you guys know why we're not calling it parking. There's the Yeti tap room's opening on December 1st, by the way, so you want to go down there.
When you say
That-
plaza
that's-
parking, you're talking about the
that-
ground level parking?
That's the
Surface
park,
parking.
Surface parking.
the surface parking. The hotel actually owns those. I can't go to them and say, you got to give those parking stalls over to the city. First thing happens, they're in violation of their Marriott franchise agreement. They actually own them. And so our original concepts, all the way through from the beginning through today, is those parking stalls would be used for both the office and the hotel. They own them. I can't go to them and say, we're just gonna take them away from you guys, give them to somebody else. So we need to have that deleted because I can't perform on that requirement. I just can't perform. Now, there's a lot of parking on P2. P2 is designed specifically in mind for the park. Has a walkway that goes between public bathrooms that are built. We built them. They're on P2. Walk across the street and they're in the park. And so it's pretty easy for them to be able to do that. The last thing, because Mike covered all my other bullet points. So I'm not
Sorry,
gonna-
maybe
Yeah.
I'm hearing things, but I thought I heard you say that, Marriott owns half the on-surface parking stalls and you have the other half. So I guess I'm a little confused how that could not be negotiated based on some of the stalls being owned.
I don't own them. Any of them. And
So I misunderstood that. Marriott owns all the surface parking.
So, no, if you look at this map right here, the blue stalls are actually owned by the hotel. And on the shared parking plan, which this is, it designates those blue stalls for the exclusive use of Unit 2B, which is the hotel. They constructed those, they paid for those, they marked them hotel parking only.
Let me. make-
2A.
It would be
2A.
2A, sorry.
Just to clarify, because we're mixing up the word. The land is owned as part of the park lot. But there's an easement right recorded, and they own that easement right. So yes, the land is owned by the lot, but the easement for those stalls is owned by the hotel. Does that
Yep.
help clarify? Because we're kind of talking a bit on cross purpose on those two things. The land is part of the park or plaza lot, but the easement are recorded rights that are owned by the hotel.
The yellow part that you see there is actually, has the same in part, circumstances. About 4 or 5 of those lots are located within the boundaries of the plaza/park lot. And there's an easement on that. And the plat that's recorded on the project shows that easement to be for the beneficial use of Unit 2B. All of them, most of them are owned by the Unit 2B landowner, and he'll finish that circle when he completes his residential project. So those 17 parking stalls are for his benefit. If I take those away from him, I risk the chance of losing that sale because he needs 75 parking stalls. He's got 60 on P3. He needs more parking stalls in order for his project to work. And I'm going to try and give him some more parking that does not impact or affect any of the previously known public parking. Public gets all the parking we've always said they were going to have. We're not asking to change any of that. But I can't do the surface parking. I understand why you'd like it. Might have been hindsight on our part back in 2018 or 2016 or whatever it was, that it might have been better affiliated with public parking, but it wasn't. And so at this point, I'm stuck. As it relates to the plaza lot, we talked about that. We'll be glad to do that. Again, we only want to provide service to help the city stretch its costs out. We'll do everything we can, but in the end, our marching orders will come from the city. We'll get the bids, we'll let you guys make a decision on whether or not this is good or bad, or whether or not you have to cut costs, and then we'll take our marching orders from you guys. I just wanted it to be noted that on the park, that lot's worth about $1 million. And we're giving it to the city. That's what we said we do. We're gonna continue to do it. I'd love to put a little restaurant up, but you guys want to park for some reason, so we'll still give it to the city. If you take what we've got, just as an update, we're gonna lose the 2.3 million. The property taxes, which were never supposed to be collected on the parking structure, after, this is not you guys' fault. After we got the project done, and after the Salt Lake County folks said, you don't have to worry about, we're not gonna assess the parking structure property tax. We've been paying property tax every year since 2021. And we are just shy of $500,000 in property tax. We did not anticipate we were going to pay. If I take my 2.3 million, $1 million piece of property, and $500,000 in property tax that's unanticipated that we would pay, we're now into the city's benefit, $3.8 million. I'm actually really excited that we're still surviving on this project. Because you can't hold onto property this long, and it's not it's circumstances that were not your fault, not our fault. And by the way, the buyer that we had to go to court to get our office pad back. I think we just filed with a lawsuit here in Draper for $94 million.
92 million. He got sued for 92 million.
Yeah, so we're really glad he's no longer with us because we think we probably would have been part of that. Other than that, we've sent a note to Shane on the existing development agreement, but I think I covered the points that we'd like to see modified.
Gee, I think that was more than a note.
Well, it's Scott, you charging me by the word,
Oh,
so
you'd maybe drunk a few too many Diet Cokes.
anyway, any questions I can answer for you? We're excited to see it move forward. I don't think anybody wants to see this project completed more than I. I'm really excited about our condominium developer. He's not cutting his teeth on this project. He's the guy we want to see things happen with. He's had a lot of experience doing this type of a project, so if we can get this done, we need it done by the end of the year because I really don't want to be in default. Questions for us?
So I guess I would just return to, you know, as we finalize something that can be, you know, approved by December, that when it comes to the park, you know, I'll be watching that language, that there's something that is agreed upon that will again see that the park is completed. I mean, if it has to be in 2028, that may be, but again, in the years since I've been interacting with the constituents of that area, there's been a real, you know, disappointment. So I just need to reflect that in the meeting tonight. I don't know if anybody has any.
We are very
Yeah.
well aware of that. The park completion is based upon city's direction. Once you have the money and tell us to get moving and give us directions, then we'll start moving.
May I comment and clarify a little bit on the park? Just, did someone say access more from the north? Was that part of it?
Well, it's not what you're thinking. You're not
Okay.
coming off the cliff wall. So at the bottom of the cliff wall towards
Do you
the
mind pulling
cul-de-sac.
that up, Mike? And so as we're looking at the park, and we can look at that, so we are the general contractor as well, so we build our projects. And I thank you for, safety is my concern with it a little bit, so we will need lay down area, we will need some of that. We're happy to do whatever that works. I like the idea of maybe a north section of the park. I just want that to be considered as we go through there, but certainly we're supportive of getting the
I
park.
mean, I don't want to speak for others that are more tied into that area. I don't know, I don't love the idea of creating a magnet for kids while construction's happening. That's my gut.
I can tell you that's our, safety, when we're in a concern, this one thankfully won't have holes, but inevitably they show up and they find their way in to see things at night, and it is kind of a
I mean,
concern.
a built park is meant to be used. That's the whole purpose of it. And it's, geared towards people spending, I don't love the opportunity for a story or anything that would go south, but. I don't-
And we fence, we do everything to try and protect, but we're building next to a school currently. And, we take all the precautions possible, and we still have visitors, so it is a concern for us. So safety on that park would be a little bit of a question there. And I know we're kind of just high level talking, but are you saying we would approach from even further north?
So where the Rocky Mountain Power boxes there on the parkway, that's the north entrance, which is right across the street from the condos. The condominium people would like it down towards where the closer to the access to the hotel.
So
So
this
that-
is the only
Right.
entrance, egress into the weekly townhomes. And originally, the plan was to have the construction road, coming in something to this effect. Am I getting that right?
Yep.
And so by moving the truck access, I don't know how far north, but getting it away, because they put all their waste containers out on the roadway right here, and the curbs have all been painted red along this roadway. to kind of, reduce traffic concerns, so.
And as it relates to that, we'll take our direction from the city, because safety is the issue, residence is the issue. But if it moves towards that northern part, we won't be building that park until the condominiums are completed.
The more we push that access there, certainly we don't want to be coming through Marriott's parking.
I would appreciate that.
They would, so an access mid-park there kind of gets in the way again.
Well, I expect your contractors to park in the third level of parking structure, so.
Deliveries,
They'll get
it's
in.
the big trucks that are the concern.
You know,
How long
Starts at
after
8 minutes,
the,
so we've got rough pretty
How
well.
long after the condos are completed? will start to complete it? Assuming that The
Business
city
area.
provides. plans
No,
and
the
provides-
canvassing meeting.
Probably about
So Mayor, we've only got about 8
It's on
minutes left
time.
before we can start the
One
next
year.
meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. So, is the council, is there a majority of the council?
I'm good to
We're done.
move forward.
What's that year for moving forward?
I'm good.
Yep.
Yep.
Councilor Highland, Newell, great, thank you. Okay, we will, have you guys work on that, and we'll hopefully pass something, I guess, in December. So perfect. Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody, for coming. I'm
I can
gonna
sleep
read real
again, but-
quickly.
We need to adjourn.
I'm gonna read real quickly.
Geez, Scott, after 40 years, I can take it, but.
Hold on, we're not done with this. We gotta adjourn.
So let me read real quickly how we approve the minutes. The minutes of this meeting will be approved by the agency secretary. Promptly will circulate a draft copy of the minutes to the board members, who then will have 3 business days to provide any proposed corrections. The secretary will then circulate a revised draft of the minutes to the board members, and the same process will continue until such time as no corrections are needed. Whereupon that draft of the minutes will be deemed approved and will become the final minutes of the meeting. At this point, I will entertain a motion to adjourn our CDRA meeting. And what's that?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay.